Barbie from Mattel and Warner Bros. Could wind up being the belle of the box office this summer. Been talking about it for quite some time, and if you believe some of these opening weekend projections, it could be looking at around $100 million or more in the domestic market. Let's talk about it. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. From the folks at Deadline Magazine, Barbie and Oppenheimer to rattle the globe with a combined $260+ million opening. This is a box office preview coming into this weekend. Barbie, which has pre-sales far exceeding that of Disney's The Little Mermaid, has a crazy range of projections stateside from 90 to 125 million. Warner Brothers is safely calling for 75 million at 4,200 theaters, but rivals are confident this doll of a comedy starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling will have gorgeous receipts. Worldwide, Barbie is eyeing around 165 million, including 60 to 65 million from 69 offshore markets, including France and Korea, among majors on Wednesday, followed by Germany, Italy, Spain, Australia, and all of Latin America on Thursday, and in the UK and China on Friday. So for all intents and purposes, this is a great start for a film of this stature. This is not a massively over-budgeted film. This isn't a $200, $250, $300 million monster that a studio has to get over. Now, there is some discrepancy on agreement when it comes to what the actual final spend was. If you look at places like the numbers, it suggests $100 million was spent on this movie. And other sources are citing $145 million. That's a big divide. Now, while we don't have a definitive answer as of yet, at least none that I can find at the time of this recording, I can say that perhaps some of the discrepancy between these two numbers, it could be because one number is net of tax credits and the other is not. In other words, the gross spend on the film from Warner Brothers might have been $145 million. And then after a bunch of tax credits were brought back in, it got the net spend down to $100 million. Again, just a guess at this point. Now, if the actual spend on this movie was 145 versus 100 million, of course, that is going to stretch out the amount that they will need from the global box office to break even in the theaters alone. But this being a Warner Brothers movie and something that's popular as it is, and with Mattel especially in the mix, at least as a co-equity partner in this film, Mattel is the one that's really going to be walking home with the bank on this one. Because even after it exits the theaters, I would expect that Warner Brothers has a deal that they will have to pay Mattel to license this film onto its own streaming service, HBO Max, or now as it's just called, Max. But one thing for certain that's squarely on Warner Brothers' shoulders is the marketing budget for this film, which is reportedly somewhere around $100 million. That's about what you would expect for a film of this scale, especially with a big piece of intellectual property like Barbie, which is Mattel's biggest seller of all time. So on the low end at $200 million of total spend, this movie needs to reach around $400 million at the global box office to strike a pure break-even point just based on retail sales in theaters alone. Of course, if the production budget actually did net out around $145 million, it's going to add another $100 million or so to the retail till that needs to be met. So $500 million in that case. But given this movie's opening weekend, it's going to go a long way to getting it there. The real question is, what happens to this movie after opening weekend? Now, before we get into that, let's also stipulate that there is a lot of crossover here, even though these two movies are technically counter-programming one another. These are not demographic audiences that theoretically should align at all, Barbie and Oppenheimer, but yet they are. And according to Deadline, 40,000 folks, and I've seen numbers as high as 50,000 folks, have already purchased double feature tickets or just buying tickets to the two movies this weekend, at least according to AMC. And that is something spectacular. When you have two major headline blockbuster films coming out on the same weekend, that's rare in and of itself. It's also even more rare to see this many people really just at one theater chain pop up to buy tickets to both on the same opening weekend. So there's a lot of interest here. This is going to make it very interesting. and I've been guiding towards this weekend for several weeks, with the second weekend of Mission Impossible and the opening weekend of Barbie and Oppenheimer, and that was before even The Sound of Freedom surprised everybody. I think this could be one of, if not the biggest, weekend at the theaters this entire year. But then Box Office Pro comes in with an even rosier picture. Now, as I've said many times, I do find that Box Office Pro, based on the formula that they use, seem to usually come in on the much higher side of what actually comes to fruition. But be that as it may, they're still projecting 140 to 175 million opening weekend range. That would be bonkers. That's almost the entire global haul that Deadline projected in its article. So who's going to wind up being right? At this point, it seems like the Barbie movie has just continued to accelerate trajectory coming into this weekend and has been for the last several weeks. Box Office Pro has continuously revised the numbers for Barbie up and up and up, and that's not changing coming into this weekend. But of course, word of mouth is going to have a tremendous impact on this. And by tomorrow and Friday, look, we're really going to find out what audiences think of this, and if they sour on this movie past the visual appeal, which has been tremendous, then that could spell long-term problems for Barbie as it moves into the subsequent weeks. However, if audiences show up and universally or nearly universally adore this film, they're going to go back and see it multiple times, and they're going to tell all their friends to go see it, and this box office is going to continue to grow over the next several weeks. I think, in that case, reaching $500 million at box office for Barbie is a foregone conclusion. But, again, it all depends on word of mouth, and it's going to take us probably at least a week, if not 10 days from this point, to find out what's really going on with this movie after opening weekend. So what really are the legitimate concerns with this film? Since the first trailer for this movie dropped nearly a year ago, I thought this movie was going to be huge, and I wasn't the only one. The trailers were very appealing, visually captivating, and it was instantly recognizable by broad-based commercial audiences, meaning that when you saw the trailer and you saw how they presented Barbie and the Barbie world, there was no question whatsoever what you were looking at. There was no question. It was Barbie and Ken and Barbie's dream house. Everything looked like the toys. It looked exactly like you would expect it. And the filmmakers for this one went to great painstaking lengths to make sure that was the case. And that is what has brought in this huge opening weekend, at least so far, that is projected as of right now. But, as I mentioned, what happens to word of mouth? If people go see this and some of the other rumors that we've seen out there in social media actually turn out to be true, and there's a lot of them floating around on social media right now from those who have actually seen the film, and they do give me a lot of pause and reason for concern. Bringing in heavy doses of politics and neo-feminism and things like this into a movie that is geared at young female audiences or young moms or family audiences, never really a good idea. It hasn't worked out too well to this point for most others, and that could be the bane of this film if that actually turns out to be true. Now, I am going to see this movie because I promised one of my kids that I'd take her to it, so I'll let you know my thoughts on the Sunday live show. Stick around for that one, 6 p.m. Sunday Eastern Standard Time. Now, that being said, this movie should be primarily about Barbie, and Barbie should be the hero. Barbie should be the main focus. The name of the movie, after all, is Barbie, not Ken. But if they start engaging in man-bashing and Ken is made out to be a fool or an idiot, or we go into man-bashing in general in a movie like this that Hollywood seems to so much adore these days, that's going to be a big problem for the downrange outlook and the projections on the financial profitability as the days and weeks go on. Most of Middle America, if not almost all of Middle America, doesn't really care for stuff like that. They're just expecting a good, entertaining film to take the kids and family to. That's what made Super Mario Bros. Such a massive success. If Barbie deviates from that, it's going to be a problem for Barbie. So if Mattel and Warner Bros. Are expecting $1 billion plus from this movie, they better hope that it looks and feels a lot like Super Mario Bros. In other words, don't give audiences reason to stop and sigh and roll their eyes in the chairs in the theaters while they're watching your movie. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What are your plans for this movie? Are you going to go see it? What do you think the box office is going to be for this movie, one way or the other? If it doesn't have a lot of political messaging in it, or if it's not that offensive to most folks, how well do you think it's going to do? If it injects a ton of politics in it, where do you think it's going to go from there? We'll find out in a few days, and we'll see you on the Sunday live show. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and until next time, take care.